Okay, you got to speak up now. There's no tape.
There should be.
Yeah, there's tape. Okay. Okay, Paula, here we are.
Are we rolling?
Yep.
Okay. So this is Paula Gloria, and my show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. A lot of people, now that I've been posting on YouTube, are questioning my story. You know, where did Paula Gloria come from, and how did this all come about? And in particular, they question the story about how I made my money in cellular telephone. So thanks to my great friend Molly Cheshire, we're here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, having come down from Lexington, where Molly's going to be creating a documentary about the Blue Licks battlefield that her forefather, Robert Patterson, was part of. So now here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, we're standing in front of South Central Bank. And South Central Bank was the physical bank that handled the finances, handled the money that was involved in building out a license for cellular telephone, and that was Cellular. We got the license from the Federal Communications Commission to give a cellular broadcast to 13 counties in Kentucky. And South Central Bank was where we parked the money that we got. Now, it wasn't like a big wad of cash. What we finally did was we did an arrangement with American Telephone and Telegraph, AT&T, gave us a loan. It took us about a year to negotiate this for $8 million, but we had to buy equipment from AT&T. So it wasn't like we, plunked $8 million in this bank. But we still had, banking needs that needed to be done. The $8 million meant that we could buy equipment from AT&T that was probably out of date and overpriced, but nevertheless we were novices. All that we had done, my family and my friends, was take advantage of what I now know today to be a binary economic opportunity, and that is capital ownership. Most wealth does not come from labor, it comes from capital. And by having this license from the Federal Communications Commission, or those being the agency, that being the agency that was allocating, according to the United States government, who would have this ownership, we had something very, very valuable. But it was not really understood. Cellular telephone in the late 80s was sort of an unknown. So most banks you wouldn't just go into a bank and say, give me a loan based on this license, because they didn't have a precedent for the value. So it took people with some vision to see it. Well, certainly the telephone company had the vision. They knew what it was about. And so that's why we wound up getting an $8 million loan from AT&T in order to pull it off. Now, I happen to have a little personal story involved with this bank, and I can see Molly smiling behind the camera because I was reminiscing about what it was like to build a cellular telephone license in Kentucky, particularly if you were a Berkeley girl, and at that, somebody who'd been involved in woo-woo occult. I'd been doing transcendental meditation for a long time. I taught transcendental meditation in San Quentin prison, and I could get some good recommendations as a result of that. But I got a little bit tired of, manifesting for Maharishi, and thanks to my mom lending me $5,000, I started a little retail store in Berkeley, California. And sometime when Molly's in Berkeley, we can go to that location of Mr. Wicker's. But having gained a lot of discipline and fortitude from my spiritual practice of transcendental meditation, woo-woo, scary, scary Nico Haupt and all you planers, this does not mean I'm part of MK Ultra, but this is certainly something I want to look into, because Russell Targ, I'm reading that and sharing what I'm reading with Molly. I think Gottlieb is talking about how can you wash somebody's memories away? Now, the question is, do you really want to wash memories away? You certainly want to wash away conditionings and those kind of memories that's going to make you go into a future situation prejudiced, so that you're not going with eyes wide open and with vim and vigor. So the little funny story that I have, that could also have a little pinch with it. This was the first time my attractions to a guy were rebuffed. And that is, when I went into the bank, I saw this very attractive bank president. And I went up to the teller and found out that he was divorced, so he'd be fair game. And we did a little tiny bit of back and forth, but I think at the end of the day he probably realized that being from California and having sort of sailed into town to sort of, in a kind of a way, destabilizing the whole status quo, because it was realized by those, in the know, that this was a really, really valuable license. So would you really want to hook up with somebody who had that kind of an asset? And I think even to this day, a lot of the viewers and the fans that might call in and say, "Hey, Paula, are you looking for a guy? Why don't you consider me?" You have to kind of look at the whole deal and what the person's involved with. I do remember coming into Bob Fitch's office once and presenting one of my ideas, because I was hanging with California people that had ideas. We would like to take an idea and run with it. And I must say, in looking back on my experience, I always had more fun making money than spending it. But I do remember sitting in Bob Fitch's office, telling him my idea, and I said, "Well, what do you think? Is this a good idea or not? What do you think? Can you do it?" And he goes, "Well, I wouldn't want to do it." And I said, "Oh, you mean it's not a good idea?" And he said, "No, I didn't say that." He said, "You can do it. You can do anything. You're from California." So that's my little story about Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I'm so happy that, I'm not very savvy with remembering all these things, my ways around. It's been many years since Sakana Cellular was here, but I was able to, like a beagle, find my way to South Central Bank. I don't know if I could to the actual apartments that we were living in. Any questions, Mike?
And it still exists.
And South Central Bank's still here. I don't know if Bob Fitch is still the president, but maybe once this is posted on YouTube, who knows? We'll see what happens. We'll stand by. Huh?
Well, and I think that also the fact that because of his social conditioning, he wasn't able to do anything innovative because he was sort of held back.
You mean like having an affair with me?
No, when he said, "It sounds like a good idea from you. You're from California. You can do anything."
Yeah, well, the China deal was when I crashed. That was the first time things didn't work out. And I remember Marcus Dalton, his father went to Ralph Nader and sort of allowed this cellular lottery opportunity to even exist. He said, "Paula, it doesn't always work the way it worked for you in the past. But generally speaking, every single cellular lottery I was involved with, as we got involved with different licenses, I would hit. And so people like Buck, they always wanted me in their partnerships because I was like lucky. But I don't know, maybe my luck sort of changed and I couldn't get a date with Bob Fitch. Who knows?"
No, but what I was talking about is that he was constrained by the public image that he had in Kentucky.
He definitely had a public image.
Whereas
I think in a small town you have to be aware of that. So it seems like, great, you've got some new millionaires in the tow. But, we have a lot of hurdles to overcome. And our competitors were the good old boys, because there was an A license given and a B license. And the A license went to anybody except the telephone company, and the B license went to the telephone company. And there's a lot of thought that maybe Craig McCaw, who seemed to kind of rise up out of nowhere, he had Mike Milton money behind him. Remember the junk bond guy? And he went around acquiring the A licenses under the guise of Cellular One. So while all this stuff was happening, probably Bob Fitch was connected with, the established community. And that's why I say it's always good to go towards the earth element and establishment. Because what else did he tell me? Oh yeah, I was saying that, all we had to work for an advertising budget was what we were getting from AT&T, who was really mostly interested just in pushing their out-of-date and overpriced equipment. And I said, regarding the other guys, or the established, the B license. The B license was the phone company. I said, what do they need money for? Something like that. And then Bob from behind, the president's, desk said, "Let me tell you something. Everybody always needs money." And I can't even repeat the Kentucky accent, but it was great. Like, oh, everybody always needs money. So, even if they've got a box seat at the Kentucky Derby, that was an eye-opener too.
And you need money too.
We always need money. Remember, everybody always needs money. And I think the heart with which the money is given, the enthusiasm, if you're going to go into a project where you're going to make some money and you're saying this is a great idea and people need it, you know, go into and spend your money on what makes you happy and gives you joy. And I think, you know, having a charity now and having people who are sending me a little bit of money, it's not nearly like what my detractors' imagination is that are doing the smear against me, but the money that's given, when it's given with real faith and belief in what you're doing, that really counts. It just helps you so much in doing what you're doing. And even if it's not an overt agenda, I remember the guy in Memphis that, you know, was the head of the martial arts studio. He was sending me $100 a month and saying, that's great what you're doing with alternative media. I remember I wasn't hearing him from him for a while, you know, not getting the money, and I thought, oh, I guess he thinks I've gone too crazy with the no planes or something. And I knew he was really strong on nonviolent communication. Well, he sent me some money and said why he wasn't doing it. His computer crashed. I don't know what the deal was. And even without him saying it overtly, just having his energy, already my work was starting to pick up again on the nonviolent communication. And I must say lately, one of my greatest accomplishments, or something I'd like to take some credit for, not all of it, of course, is to connect with 9/11 Shaman. Because
hey, I get a little credit for that too.
Molly Cheshire can talk about your credit. What you want. No, speak.
Well, it's only that I was kind of terrified of looking at a video that he had made about, I think, me. Was it directed at me? I can't remember.
Yeah, some of it was.
It was just, I thought, oh my God, I'm bracing myself for all this nasty energy, and it was really cute. And so when I had Paula videoed my reaction, which was completely unexpected, it seemed like it shifted something.
Yeah, Molly said, oh, it's kind of cute, he's a friend of me. And it turns out later, because you haven't seen the shows we've done with him, he said he did just want a connection. So that's what nonviolent communication is all about. It's creating connections of empathy. And always make the assumption on the charitable side, on the open side. Don't assume people are doing the worst. Don't make stories that, oh, they're doing it because they're CIA agents and things like that. Make the assumption that people are doing the best they can. And like 9/11 Shaman said, I thought you guys were the bad guys. He was a plane hugger at first. So, you know. Anyway, so that's it for Paula Gloria here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where we got the license from the FCC to bring cellular telephone service to 13 counties. And this is an example of binary economics and the power of capital ownership. This is Paula Gloria, over and out.
Nice.
Thanks. Yeah, this was definitely nice. I was so good. Now we can go have breakfast, Burger King or whatever. Oh, here, let me...
Dunkin' Donuts. We'll go through a loop through downtown.
So we got to get a picture of Bob Fitch.
I was surprised that you mentioned his name.
Oh, really? Well, I thought I did it pretty nicely. Here we are in downtown Bowling Green, which has sort of been eclipsed by all the strip malls around. Bowling Green was known for being a test ground for the franchises, but this is the original downtown, all in here.
Pretty little square.
Yeah. And over on the other side is where the lawyers' offices are, and I guess where the stocks and things are traded locally. I think that was an older bank. We don't have time to eat here today, but I'm pretty sure this was the first restaurant that we were taken to by a couple people who were interested in the cellular license and kind of understood what the implications were of a federal license in a local area. And Buck Lou was with me the first time we came through. Buck and I were kind of the pioneers of the deal, and physically we made a 19-state tour in 3 weeks of all the different cellular areas because we had applied in a lot of them. So And here is what's become of the cellular license, how it finally got physicalized. When I was here, we never even had an office. We were just working for, I remember, a year's worth of FedExes going back and forth practically every single day as we were negotiating with the various companies to get the funding to build it out. But at the end of the day, this is what you get, just a little storefront to actually sign up the subscribers. And that's it. So Molly, before we were rolling the tapes, when you were doing the camera work in front of South Central Bank, you had said, this is the bank? And I was just wondering, what were you expecting?
Well, I wasn't expecting some sort of branch located out, sort of in Strip Mall City. I was expecting, the downtown, the old historic district with the pillars at the front, the main branch. I mean, wouldn't you think that that's where they would be deciding on big loans? What was it, a $5 million loan, $8 million loan?
No, it actually had not much to do with the bank. That was AT&T's internal financing that did that. That was just the local area that finally had to part whatever financial dealings we had to do.
Why did you pick that branch as opposed to the main branch?
I'm not sure why we picked it. I'll have to ask my partner.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of funny that, here you're doing all these high finances out of, not that it's a double-wide trailer, but it's
a double-wide trailer.
It doesn't look very secure, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, it didn't? Well, I mean, I do remember one guy, George Dinas, that used to come down from Telephone and Data Services that eventually did acquire our license. And the guy who started that, the name is slipping my mind. Oh, Leroy Carlson. He used to work for Joe Kennedy a long time ago. The Joe Kennedy that wrote the Securities and Exchange Commission's laws, because he said he should know how to write them because he violated them so much.
John Kennedy's father?
Yeah. So that guy was sort of a young guy working for Joe Kennedy, and that's when he realized the biggest money was in telephones. And he said that it was an adage that you'd go into small towns in America and you'd have the church, the bank, and the telephone company. So downtown Bowling Green, where we were, had more of that feeling of the church, the bank, and the telephone company.
Yeah, but where was the telephone company? I didn't see any big building for the telephone company.
Well, that's what happened when AT&T got deregulated.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So all of this, the huge power of these licenses, the capital ownership of technology is now all hidden. In the past, the bank, the church, and the telephone company, you would be able to see it. And then you saw that Kentucky Cellular thing that was just such a little hovel of a place that finally actually interacts with the public.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, I'm glad we went.
So you're over your disappointment?
Well, let's just say that my illusions are not what they were. I'm disillusioned, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, not in a bad way, but I mean, it's sort of like, check.
Right. Any other thoughts?
It's a beautiful day.
It certainly is. We're on our way now to Lexington, to the Federal Medical Center.
Yeah.
We'll keep people in suspense. Okay, Molly and I just had a little revelation. She thought that...
Well, now I realize why I had such high expectations, because you had always talked about, this big, huge conference room, and all these guys were sort of like, well, little lady, can you make us a cup of coffee? Not realizing that you're the big cheese.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this building and thinking, where is this big conference room? You're the president of a bank, but...
Right. Now, what Molly's referring to is a story I told her when we were down in Atlanta, which was, I think, Bell South's headquarters. And this guy invited us down who had access to petty cash to acquire licenses. It could be just his decision only, up to $20 million. But I had done some rough calculations based on the sale of the license next to us.
And I was looking more to the tune of $64 million, which is why my partners were always trying to get me out of the picture so they could just sell the sucker and get on with their life.
And what would they have been happy to sell with? You were going for 64. What were they going to?
Well, you got to figure people probably had invested no more than $10,000, so they were looking at some, you know.
They would have been happy with the $3 million that you.
Yeah, even less than 10,000. A lot of people would have, you know, because it was an opportunity. It was basically a little window that allowed people to acquire capital based on the earnings of future capital. That's what the license was being sold for. It was being sold for its future earnings.
Right.
That's how they valued it. But because the technology was so new, regular banks wouldn't know how to lend on it because they didn't have any formula set up.
Nobody understood how much it was really worth.
Yeah, a few people did. That's what I'm saying. When I was down at that boardroom, on one hand, you know, when it came to getting coffee, the knee-jerk reaction was to look for the woman to go get it, and then they would catch themselves, oh my God, this is the person we have to impress, so we can seduce her license away for less than $20 million. So that was kind of hilarious, because I'd never felt any prejudice as far as feminism and all that, because I'd never been involved with corporate America at all. I'd never been inside a corporate building.
No idea what the glass ceiling was.
Yeah, I didn't know what the prejudice was like. I just found it amusing that I would be called sometimes hun and sometimes sir.
Not ma'am?
No, not never, but it just has to do with how people defer to how they perceive authority and power, and they just don't usually see it in the hands of somebody in her 30s who just had paid attention to people who were watching these opportunities, they're kind of cocaine snorting, deal making, Laguna Beach kind of California guys. And I paid attention. I said, this makes sense, These valuable licenses are going up for auction, for lottery, not for auction. And Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine, nobody's telling the public about it. So it made sense to me. I said, I want to have a cellular telephone license. I want to be a telephone company.
I'm still curious why they would call you sir.
Respect.
They think that you were a guy?
It was a knee-jerk reaction that you respect men. There's ma'am is just not the same. Ma'am doesn't usually,
Really?
It's usually hun, go get my coffee. And it, they wanted to make a connection. I mean, I wasn't angry at anybody. I realized I was truly baffling them. I wasn't angry about it. I just found it very amusing. Because obviously I was also in the catbird seat. I had the license.
Right.
So you tend to relax when you know you've got the power. Or you've got what they really, really want. Because if this guy down in Atlanta could have picked up our license for $20 million at that time, it would have gotten him probably a promotion.
Right.
Because the telephone company could have widened out their footprint. And believe me, after this happened, that loophole was sealed up, because by 1996 you had the Federal Telecommunications Act, which made sure that little nobodies like me could go in there and get that kind of capital. And furthermore,
point it to yourselves.
In Congress, they were actually citing as an example of why this is such a bad thing, what happened to me, by saying truck drivers were getting cellular telephone licenses and becoming millionaires. That's what they were saying, and this is why I always have a soft spot in my heart for access through Sirius Cellular and satellite, the whole Howard Stern opportunity. Can I make a connection to truck drivers? Because at one time, truck drivers and myself shared the same story. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I agree. They really picked a bad example. I think that the more effective example would have been some guy can pick up these licenses and hold the rest of the country hostage.
Nobody did. They would sell out. But see, here was the fear.
I'm just saying that
this is interesting that you bring up. Here was the fear and why the Telecommunications Act had to come along. This this was just cellular telephone service. This wasn't the wireless cable, and this is something ugly George sort of stumbled onto also when he was trying to make the technology work more for him. If somebody like me had gotten a wireless telephone license, that would enable me to broadcast, and chances are I wouldn't have sold out, not for any price, if I could have gotten my television station going. Do you know what I'm saying?
When did you want to start?
My telephone?
Yeah, no, your television station.
When I made an application and got some people involved too, like my stepmother, for example. She saw what I did with Cellular, and I was even more excited about what was coming down the pike with MMDS, wireless cable. And we had actually made an application in San Luis Obispo, and I was just getting interested in holistic health and a lot of the mischief that had gone on with the medical establishment not showing really good therapies, and so I thought I would just start with San Luis Obispo, and I always had this real hands-on approach, you know what I mean? Any more questions?
No, I think I'm going for the food.
Okay.
I see the Golden Arches, and if worst case scenario, I can always go there.
Okay.
Look, there's your sign. Well, we could easily do a stand-up out here if you want.
Yeah.
Should we do it now? Or should we do it afterwards?
Let's do it afterwards.
That's a great stand-up.
Yeah. I have 22 minutes left.
Beyond this point, no photos, so just...
That's what it says?
Yeah.
Former President Clinton raised money for his wife Hillary's campaign tonight at the State Theater in Minneapolis when hecklers interrupted, shouting that the September 11th terror attacks were a fraud. President Clinton confronted them.
An inside job? How dare you?
Shouting that
Tensions on edge. Don't you think they're going to get, at the very least, tased or beaten to a pulp?
How can we trust you as president when you're at the Bilderberg Group? That's high treason.
Hey, do we have some fucking security in this building? Or do I have to come over and take this guy down?
Yesterday, it was a screaming audience member who got Bill's attention. President Clinton was campaigning for his wife in Corpus Christi, Texas yesterday when an idiot started